Wyatt came to a quick conclusion after receiving his 3 scheduled implants. The process was puzzlingly quick, but the pain was something he was not willing to deal with voluntarily in the future. Due to the limitations of the medical wing and the current state, he wouldn't be receiving his cybernetic eyes, which suited him just fine, and he was in no hurry to replace his perfectly functioning natural eyes. Nor would he receive a direct uplink to the main net frame, but he didn't care about that one since that particular implant needed either the cybernetic eyes or go through the gene-enhancing program that was available only to the highest echelons of society in the Principality. The implants he did receive were impactful, and he wobbled with every step he took. The first was a series of nano-injectors that now laced his vertebrae and would, over a few hours, make their way to his brain. The injectors would then be ready to dull pain, enhance his reaction time, and combat neurotoxins should that be needed. The second implant was the one he was currently hating the most. At the back of his skull now sat a small biomechanical chip that would allow Commander Redford, or whoever the commanding officer at the time was, to deliver him orders and instructions. He could feel the chip wriggling into position, slowly growing to prevent rejection, and was now messing with his ears, dulling his sense of stability and cutting his hearing range by a significant amount as it latched itself in order to provide its benefits. In short, it was a sort of long-range, one-way radio. He could receive orders but couldn't reply in turn since he wasn't connected to the network. As long as the distance didn't exceed more than 100 kilometers from the nearest network access point, that is. The third implant, though, was the main reason why he would not ever take any further implantations if he could help it. Sure, the first 2 hurt in their own unique ways. His back was killing him, and the nasty headache he was going through did him no favors. But the last one was in a league of its own. Similarly to the nano-injectors on his back, the third implant followed that same process. But instead of connecting with his brain and limiting itself to his column, the rest of his body was the objective. Well, not his whole body, just his bones. A subdermal implant was inserted in his chest, as close as possible to his aorta. Thanks to the local anesthesia and the quick, precise motions of the robotic unit performing the seconds-long surgery, he didn't feel a thing, and his wound was closed a moment later with biofoam. The scar would be gone in just a few days at most. The pain, though, made itself known half an hour later. It began like an itch he couldn't quite scratch, but all over his body and underneath his skin. Then it increased until every step was agony as it rippled across his whole body. It felt like getting pricked by a needle, but unlike a single stab that was barely painful, annoying, and quick to pass, he was enduring hundreds of them at the same time with every movement he made. Even breathing is a struggle, he muttered as he continued to wobble his way around the hangar, only occasionally hearing the snickering of technicians, mechanics, and the odd pilot that made their way there. I understand that the ship doesn't have the facilities to do this in private, but their staring is not helping my mood one bit, he thought with annoyance as a fresh wave of pain coursed through his body. He couldn't even hate or blame the medic in charge for anything. She had warned him of what he was to expect and what he needed to do for the implants to take full root. That was the main reason he couldn't sit down or lay on his bed, trying to be still as a corpse in an attempt to lessen the pain. And why he couldn't take painkillers either. He had to endure the process fully awake and on constant move, which, as he was reminded again as he nearly tumbled to the ground for the 7th time since his arrival, his hatred for the second implant increased. The pain of having his bones suffer microfractures every second only to be sealed and put back together almost instantly, he could handle. It wasn't enough to make him scream, but it was a ticking, maddening constant that he couldn't help but wince, groan, and clench his teeth in response to it. But the sensation of impending vertigo and his impaired balance, making it impossible to keep a steady posture or any semblance of rhythm? Yes, he hated the second implant with a passion. As he finished another round, he noticed a vaguely familiar figure enter the hangar. Her red armor and blue hair gave her away as she approached in his direction. The few staring crew members made themselves scarce at her sight, opting to admire her from a safer distance. Damn, what was her name again? Juliana? No, that's her sister, right? Come on, think! Damn this headache! Her name started with a C, I think? Cecilia? Celestine? Cynthia! Yes, her name was Cynthia Winfield. He mentally patted himself on the back for remembering just in time before the blue-haired woman said something he couldn't quite catch. Her voice was still pleasant to hear, but distorted thanks to the implant. Not to be disrespectful, he began, voice entirely too loudly, and stopped for a moment to face her. Grave mistake. As the moment he stopped moving, he felt as if the ground was about to become the ceiling the wall, and his feet his arms. With a mighty groan, he pushed himself to the side, catching himself before he fell and continued walking. Pain rocked his senses, and he gritted his teeth hard in protest, but he succeeded. The sensation of vertigo lessened, and now he could wobble in peace again. After a few seconds, he spoke up as he noticed the blue-haired woman looking at him with a hint of pity and understanding in her sapphire blue eyes. Sorry about that. The implants won't allow me to follow protocol for now, he apologized. How may I? A pained groan cut him off. Be of service? Breathe deeply and don't fight the pain. You're straining yourself that way. Calm, deep breaths. Let your lungs do the heavy lifting, Lieutenant Staples, Cynthia replied, as she walked beside him and spoke louder than usual so he could hear her voice. Wyatt did as instructed, though it was difficult, and the first attempt made his entire ribcage protest in anger. But he didn't give up and continued. It took the better part of 5 minutes until breathing no longer hurt, and much to his joy, the pain lessened considerably. Another 5 minutes later, his vertigo also diminished, most of his hearing returned, and the headache was not as prevalent as before. During that time, Cynthia walked silently at his side as a regal pillar of unshakable duty, and her advice was greatly welcomed by Wyatt, now that he reaped the benefits of it. Thank you, Lady Cynthia. I feel much better now. I suspect that given the condition I found you, you were not told the proper physical steps to aid you in the implant adjustment period, she stated as a matter of fact. Wyatt nodded lightly. I wasn't aware there were any to begin with, Lady Cynthia. I was merely told that I needed to keep moving and that I shouldn't take painkillers. Again, I thank you for your aid. To his surprise, he saw her stoic face turn into a displeased one, frown and all. I will report this immediately. Such gross oversight cannot go unnoticed. She closed her eyes for 2 seconds, then opened them again, her expression returning to the picture of professional neutrality. It has been done. Did she actually do it, or is she just pulling my leg? He asked himself, but put it to the side in favor of her previous aid. I thank you, Lady Cynthia, but won't you get in trouble for it? I may not be a part of the military structure as I hold no official rank, but as Princess Clara's bodyguard, my position stands above many in terms of importance and weight. Protocol must be followed for order to exist, and its structure must be respected in due turn. You are a Lieutenant Wyatt Staples before you're a commoner, and your rank was insulted by the denial of proper medical insight and exercises, and thus you suffered more pain and discomfort than necessary. I can assure you I will not be punished for exposing such gross incompetence, she replied with a stern, serious tone. Oh, shit. Color me pleasantly surprised. Another noble worth her title, though she's a stickler for rules, too. Now I understand why she protested about Woodshaft's smuggling operations. I wonder if Princess Clara has any influence in her attitude and views, he wondered before giving her a faint nod. In that case, I thank you for your aid, Lady Cynthia. You may call me by my name, Lieutenant Wyatt. My princess has bestowed the courtesy of extending you her hand in friendship, and the use of her name without honorifics. You saved my life as well, so I offer the same courtesy, she revealed with a hint of humility. Despite everything, Wyatt couldn't stop a smile from spreading on his lips. Without so much pain clouding his mind and being able to think more or less properly again without the headache, his awkwardness returned as well as a clear reminder of his position. In that case, Cynthia, you may call me by my name, too. Very well, she replied, and suddenly turned on her heel in a swift, clean motion that would have put a ballerina to shame with how smooth it was despite her bulky armor. Follow me. My princess wishes to speak to you in private. Commander Redford has been informed, and you have been granted leave until my princess says otherwise. I obey, he replied in the common answer expected to give to a noble issuing an order outside the military branches. And here I thought I would never speak to her again. I wonder what she wants from me. Wyatt followed Cynthia at an even pace, never stopping his controlled, steady breathing. The trip took no more than a few minutes until they made it to one of the commander's quarters, which served as the temporary room for the princess. Outside the door stood two black, meter-tall cylinders. He watched as the bodyguard put her hand on the scanner and then introduced a long, complicated code. When she was done, the cylinders turned white and the doors opened. Wyatt advanced as Cynthia stepped aside to give him access to the room. He raised an eyebrow in confusion. "Enter, Wyatt," Cynthia ordered. "You're not coming in?" he asked, just to make sure his assumptions were not mistaken. "Clara wishes to speak with you in private," she replied, and said nothing more. Wyatt nodded, and a ball of iron suddenly manifested itself in his stomach. He'd heard stories and other gossip that when a commoner was invited to a noble's room in private, it was for one of three things: murder, sexual reasons, or simple amusement. He wasn't one to believe such hearsay, but now he wasn't so sure about it. Still, he stepped into the lavishly ample room with just some trepidation seeping through his otherwise practiced mask. 3 steps into the room, the door behind him closed with a rasp of metal and a hiss, sealing it behind him. The ball of iron turned into a veritable pit, and he began to sweat nervously. The room was quite ample, he had to admit. There was a large bed on the other end, a large private bathroom to his right, and expensive pieces of furniture set about the place. But his focus was on the blonde woman sitting on a chair in front with a small circular desk set before her, holding a few confectionery treats and a violet liquid he wasn't sure what it was. "Ah, Wyatt, please come sit. I wish to discuss a few things with you," Clara said, offering him a sincere, friendly smile. The pit shrank in since, but didn't leave him. "Okay, Wyatt, play it cool and try not to get murdered. Don't say anything stupid or offensive and you may walk out of this in one piece. A noble is already dangerous. Royalty? Doubly so," he thought as he obeyed and sat on the available chair. Immediately after, small electrical shocks erupted all across his back, arms, and legs, but they were not unpleasant. If anything, the pain was further reduced and was now only mildly annoying. Seeing his puzzled expression, Clara giggled. "I am aware of your current condition, Wyatt. The Dulaxis, Ontoro, and Kinator implants are some of the worst there are. Necessary, but bothersome to deal with. That chair is specially designed to allow your body to work on its own while you are seated. It doesn't replace physical activity, but it makes it far more tolerable for some time." Wyatt bowed his head. "I thank you for your benevolence, Clara. How may I be of service?" "I wish to know more about you, Wyatt. Without access to your records, I'm afraid I know nothing more than what you can tell and show," she said before sipping from her drink. "Do help yourself to some desserts. They are delectable, I can assure you." "Don't mind if I do," he thought, as he reached for a small, round thing covered in white fudge and topped with some sort of red fruit. He ate it, and his eyes widened as the explosion of flavor overwhelmed his taste buds, and only by sheer will of restraint, he stopped himself from scarfing down the entire plate of goodstuffs. He munched on the offered treat slowly, savoring the exquisite sweet thing in his mouth. When he swallowed, a satisfied sigh escaped his lips. "What are these?" he asked, enamored with the sweet things. "Cake, a small version of them. There are also cookies, scones, and chocolate bits. The glass is filled with grape juice," she replied gently. "Go on. You can eat as much as you desire." "I might just do that. What in the blazes is grape juice, cake, and chocolate?" he asked himself before taking 2 of each treat with as much humility as he could muster. As much as he wanted to abuse the princess's goodwill in this particular subject, he knew better. "I'm an open book, Clara. What do you wish to know of me, though I assure you I am not remotely interesting in any way?" "I shall be the judge of that, Wyatt," Clara replied before eating a small piece of chocolate. "Tell me, where are you from?" "I'm from Volantis, Your Majesty, a little colony of no importance in the territory belonging to House Gimor under the supervision of Baron Carlos Arante, bordering Caiston territory, actually. To be specific, I was born and raised in Volantis's capital city, Fire. My family is of little note. My father is an electrical engineer and my mother is a social worker. I have 2 younger brothers, one of whom followed our father's footsteps and the other became a Clixal hunter," he replied honestly. Clara tilted her head slightly. What is a Clixol? It is an avian-like creature, 3 meters tall, fierce, durable, and quick creatures, but stupid. They are a constant problem to the agricultural areas of the planet as they breed extremely fast and eat all sorts of livestock while destroying crops in the process, he replied, before eating a cookie and taking a sip of grape juice. Is this what royalty eats regularly? I wouldn't mind groveling at her feet if it means I get to eat these things every now and again. And the juice? It is the best drink I've ever tasted, he thought giddily, his nervousness all but eradicated and the pit in his stomach replaced by a longing for more of those tasty, sweet treats. It was as if he hadn't eaten at all in the mess hall. Clara sipped on her juice, nodding twice. I see. How old are you and how were you raised? I'm 21 years old and I guess I was raised as best as my parents could afford, he said, unsure. We rarely went hungry and only when the taxes were raised for short periods of time. I received the standard education available to all commoners, and once I was 14, I enlisted in the Royal Navy as a pilot. I spent the following years at the academy preparing to be a pilot, and I was good enough to achieve the rank of warrant officer. When I graduated, I was dispatched to the 3rd Fleet, 2nd Frontier Corps, and stationed on the lingering systems as a garbage hauler, he explained simply and politely before eating another cake. How was your time in the academy? Was it enjoyable? Were you mistreated? She asked, her friendly smile dropping slightly. Wyatt felt the instant shift in the atmosphere and straightened involuntarily. The purple eyes of the princess were fixed on him, and he suddenly felt like he was being studied. I do not know what to reply to that, Clara, he replied. What the hell? Why would she care about something like that? I thought she was going to ask about my records or anything besides that. What is she playing at? He thought, setting aside his treats for the time being. I enlisted because I had always wished to become a pilot and see the stars while serving the principality. My time at the academy was irrelevant to me. I mean, I wasn't treated like most other commoners, so I can't complain too much, I guess. I also can't say that I was mistreated. Sure, there were incidents that required a report, but they went unsolved and I ignored anything after that, he replied. But inside he spat with disdain at the memory of the many incidents that tarnished his otherwise exemplary record. Clara kept quiet for several seconds, sipping more of her juice and eating 2 cookies in the process. When she spoke again, she did so in an even, serious tone. Then I assume being ordered to bark like a dog in the middle of a mess hall is considered something to be ignored? For the first time in many years, Wyatt felt his measured and perfectly crafted mask of indifferent servitude falter slightly, and he answered with a frown. Compared to what other nobles usually do? Yes, he replied, and then relaxed. Princess Clara, I'm a commoner. It is the duty of every commoner to obey the orders of a noble, and can only reject them under orders of another of higher standing or from another house or lineage. If you were to order me to, say, drop on all fours and act as an animal for your entertainment, I will do so without hesitation. Clara nodded. Indeed, I could order you to do that, and more shameful things, Wyatt. Be safe to know that I shan't. Unlike those nobles that stand below the garbage you used to haul, I have learned respect towards others, she explained, and her friendly demeanor returned. Though I must say, while it was quite amusing to see you thoroughly humiliate them, I would have preferred it had been done through other means and not see you risk your dignity. Surprised by her words, Wyatt swallowed as he offered a small smile. One must do as one can, Clara. Clara rolled her eyes and waved a hand in dismissal. Please, Wyatt, I want to know the real you, not this proper and cordial veneer you portray. Speak your mind freely and without restriction. Think of me as nothing more than a friend, as I will do the same. None can hear us. This conversation shall not be known to anyone but us. I promise you, you will not be punished or held accountable for anything you say. If this is a test, then I can't see where it bends, he thought, smiling more. Who would have thought that a princess freaking royalty would be so approachable? The respect he had for Clara upon their meeting increased, and he allowed himself to relax once more, careful to retain his breathing rhythm. In that case, Clara, I shall be sincere. I was not afraid to risk my dignity because I have none. Or rather, I care not for it as well as I care not about pride or shame. If I can win by sacrificing something that is worthless to me, then I will happily do so. Clara nodded, sipping from her drink again. Unlike the fools who thought they humiliated you and proudly preened their feathers as if they had achieved something, you showed their incompetence and stupidity. Rest assured they will be punished for their conduct, but not directly. No surprises there, he thought as he drank more of his juice. Noble immunity and their capacity to bend the rules in their favor were nothing new to him. That being said, I am surprised that you have not expressed worry for the well-being of your family, said the princess. When His Majesty, the prince, showed me the map, I managed to glimpse that House Guimore chose to remain neutral in this conflict. Guimores have a reputation for being opportunistic. I'm sure they will declare themselves for a side once a clear upper hand is held by one side, he replied calmly, not allowing the bit of worry in his heart to show. Clara tilted her head slightly and pushed a finger up against her chin. You don't seem terribly bothered about the coup, Wyatt. Wyatt chuckled darkly, his eyes drifting to the cup in his hand. What other choice do I have? The last great conflict in the Principality was more than 400 years ago. Another coup, unsuccessful but bloody. Trust me, Clara, I am terrified. I will do anything and everything the prince orders me in order to prevent another civil war. But at the end of the day, I'm just a commoner with no power, say, or means to do anything by myself. Not that it matters if I was a noble or even royalty. We are in this conflict together, and the sooner Duke Draymore is put down, the better, he replied sincerely, but internally, he was fuming. Nobles die trying to keep their riches or increase their status and reach. If they can't win, they'll flee. But they always use the lives of the people they are supposed to be in charge of protecting for their own means, and don't care if we have to die in droves as long as it means they win something out of it. Clara's expression fell, and her smile was replaced by a sad one. That is a grim and unfortunate view on things, Wyatt? Wyatt shrugged. Maybe. But it is also true and the only view a commoner can have. At least I am in the Navy and can fight back. Most won't have a chance to do anything at all. It is sad that what you say is true, Wyatt. The Principality has changed since its founding and not always in the ways that mattered, it hurts me to say. Prince Julius Astor would be ashamed of what has become of it if he were to see it today. Doubly so in the case of his progeny. Clara let out a mournful sigh. Thank you for humoring me, Wyatt. You may now leave, and please, take every treat with you. I have more so they won't be missed. Wyatt stood up slowly, bowed his head, and obeyed with gusto the order given to him, gathering all the sweet, sweet treats on his pocket handkerchief. I obey, he said, and a second later the doors opened. Cynthia stood by the entrance waiting for him to exit. They exchanged a curt salute and he left. A moment later, Cynthia entered the room and the doors closed again. Cynthia let out a tired sigh and her expression relaxed. Well? He is unlike what I expected, which is a good thing. He tries to portray himself as someone cordial and straightforward, but he is quite selective about what he says and how to express his thoughts. A cunning man, Clara replied, lips curling up into a smile. He is as valiant as I thought, though, and has a good heart. His loyalty, however, is questionable. Do you believe he may be a potential traitor, turncoat, or spy in disguise, Clara? Cynthia asked. Clara shook her head gently. He is no spy, nor do I believe he could be at any point. He's too honest. A turncoat or traitor? Unlikely. I also doubt he'll run away when a chance presents itself to him. His heart beams with the light of a true knight. His actions that culminated in our salvation are proof of it. I'll keep an eye on him, Cynthia replied. What about the trash? Redford has been informed. Those 3 idiots did it in front of everyone. He shall punish them accordingly, I am certain. Another sip of juice was soon followed by a pleased sigh escaping her lips. However, I am interested in what he can do as a pilot. Cynthia nodded. His unorthodox tactic drove that black ship away. As Redford stated, a man of his talent was wasted in such a posting. He has already prepared a series of simulations to gauge Lieutenant Wyatt's capabilities. Inform Redford that I wish to see Wyatt in action. The fleet shall travel to Gintrax once we are in range to do so. Resupply should be done within 4 hours, and we shall have 3 days of travel until we can leave. Plenty of time to see if his tactic was a fluke, or if there is true talent beneath his actions, Clara replied. Cynthia sighed tiredly, and her judging eyes fell upon her friend. You just want an excuse to watch dogfights, don't you? Clara blushed. Shush, you.